Many new DMs are a little unsure of what to do with their first session 0. Likewise, many experienced DMs have their session 0 down pat. But that doesn't mean there's nothing to be learned from the experience of other DMs. In this video, we're going to explore what you can do in your first session 0. We're also going to explore a topic that may help you out as we move forward into a more inclusive gaming environment: consent in gaming. I usually have 2 session 0s when I run. The first one is a DM's session 0. The second one is the player's session 0. In the old days, they were the same thing. Used to be just called Midnight at Denny's. This video is going to cover the DM's session 0. We'll cover the player's session 0 in the next video. Before we get started, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell to get notified of upcoming content. By the way, you can watch our live game streams at twitch.tv/ZealZaddy. So let's get started. I'm Scott Coventry, and welcome to ZealZaddy. So what does a session 0 actually accomplish? It's really only an open discussion between the DM and their players. Of course, don't give up all the secrets to your game, but you have to let the players know what they're going to be getting into. If you fail at this critical juncture, your game will be in jeopardy of ending prematurely when either your expectations or the player's expectations go unmet. The DM gets to gauge the interest level that they see in their players. By the same token, the players get to see whether they're really that interested in what you're offering. Now, the more open you are about your campaign, the setting, your DMing style, and the level of expected player participation, the better off you'll be. But there's also an added benefit in that you get to see whether the players are a good fit for each other. In the DM's session 0, they're going to talk about their world, especially if it's a homebrew world, the setting, the genre and tone. They're also going to talk a little bit about character creation and any changes that they're making to the rules. It's really their extended elevator pitch to their prospective players. They'll talk about the system, particularly if the players are unfamiliar with it. But beyond that, they're also going to have to go over the house rules that they're going to employ to make the game more enjoyable. They should also describe how they expect to run. Is it going to be a cinematic style game with lots of emphasis on action? Will it have gritty realism where healing and recovery is very slow? Will it be surreal? Will there be long, complicated plot lines with political intrigue? How about no player death? Games like Tales from the Loop, death is off the table. What about a game that's actually a suicide mission with an expected TPK at the very end of the entire thing? This is a great opportunity to ask all your questions. And whatever the DM says, absorb it all. It's the most open the DM's going to be about the game until it starts. Probably even after it starts. So make sure you walk away with a full understanding of the concept of the game and how the system works. After this, let the players go away and have time with their own thoughts, with the goal of them coming back with a character concept that both fits in the world and they'll be excited to play. We'll cover the character concept in the player's session 0 that we cover in the next video. Let's break down the DM's session 0 into a list. You don't have to follow the list verbatim. Most of what's on the list you won't use in every game. You can just use it as a guide to build your own list. You can download our list from patreon.com/ZealZaddy for free. The link will be down below. The first part will be player and GM communication. Out-of-game communication. Does everyone use WhatsApp? Are they going to use that to communicate outside the game between the GM and the players? In-game communication. How do you communicate to players in the game, and how do players communicate to each other? Do you allow texting, some kind of signals? During streaming, it can be even more complicated. A lot of players will put their phone right in front of them so that they can see the chat. That can become a distraction for a lot of DMs. For social media, are there things you're not allowed to share? Things that are private in the game? What about restricted content? In this day and age, there's some very interesting things going on. For instance, what if the DM has a Patreon page where he shares pre-game notes? Are you allowed as a player to go and look at those notes? What system are you running? Is it a common system like D&D 5e or Star Wars, or something a little more esoteric like Cult or Close to the Edge? Here's a tricky one. What about disallowed races and classes? The moment you say disallowed, expect the players to have a lot of questions about why that's disallowed, what's going on in the game that they're not there. A lot of players, the moment they hear that, that's exactly what they wanted to play. The character creation system is going to be very important to every player. They're going to want to know, are you using a standard system, modified standard system? Are you buying with points? Are you going to give them pre-generated characters? You'll have to explain your combat style. Are you going to use battle maps? Are you going to use theater of the mind? Will you be having long, drawn-out battles with huge numbers of participants, or will you have smaller skirmishes, 1 or 2 people at a time? What about tracking things? There's a whole world of things to track in D&D 5e and most other systems. Encumbrance, endurance, fatigue, spell components, money, just a whole bunch of stuff to keep track of. Do you care about that as a DM? The players will want to know. Now, from the DM's perspective, the one that you're going to be most excited to talk about probably is the setting, especially if it's a homebrew world. It's where you get to take all those great ideas that you have and roll them out for everyone to see for the first time. Are you running a sci-fi game, fantasy, modern, gothic horror? The genre is going to matter to a lot of players. As a matter of fact, there's some players that only like to play one genre. What level of realism are you looking for? Is it complex with difficult plot lines? Or is it something with a simple good versus evil vibe? Is the pace slower? Or is everything paced dramatically and quickly like a movie? Everyone will ask, but do you use alignment? Some DMs do, some don't. Some restrict the use of it. Notable people and places will obviously play an important role in your game. Do the characters know any of them? That, of course, leads to culture, religion, politics, military, thieves' guilds. Do the players know anything about this stuff? This leads right into current events. Is there a war going on? Is one brewing? Did an emperor conquer the kingdom and is now suppressing all knowledge? Could the earth be shaking every day at noon and no one knows why? Are magic and technology levels atypical? Are there guns in the world? Is magic rare or restricted? A lot of players will be very upset if you run a low magic world. Because of D&D 5e, they've gotten used to the idea that magic is pervasive. An important element, especially for streamers, is gameplay structure. What time do you start? When do you end? Do you take a break? Do they need to be there at 5:30 when you're going to run at 6? What's the anticipated length of the game? Do you plan on running for a few weeks, or is this going to go on indefinitely? Especially for games that are going to run on for a while, you really do need to talk about commitment to the game and absences. Commitment to the game means that they're going to show up on time, and if they're not, to give you at least a day's notice. That, of course, begs the question, what do you do when a player is absent? Is the character going to be run by the other players? Is it going to be run by the DM? Is it going to be a floating static block that follows you throughout the game? How will you handle in-game, out-of-character discussions? It annoys a lot of DMs to no end when their players start talking tactically in the middle of a combat, when the DMs put a lot of emphasis in trying to limit the ability for them to do that. Under the term game etiquette, there's a lot to be covered. Phone use can bother a lot of DMs and other players, to be honest. What about cursing? A lot of DMs don't like that. A lot of them don't even like modern lingo to be used. And that does lend a little bit more realism to the game, which a lot of DMs, they love, they praise that. What about snacks and food? Is somebody bringing food? Is everyone contributing? Is it allowed during the game or only during the break? Another one that comes up because of that is alcohol. Some DMs don't like players to be drinking during the game, some don't mind. One that will matter to the players quite a bit is the DMing style that you have. What do you like as a DM? Do you prefer characters that think their way through problems or that shoot their way through problems? Do you use complex plots or simpler action-oriented plots? Do the players have to stay in character all the time? Are character voices required all the time? A lot of players are just incapable of doing that, and some of them just don't like it. Is the action bigger than life, or is the action more realistic? Are there a lot of quiet moments, punctuated by extreme violence? David Lynch has made a living making movies like that. How will the world react to the player's actions? Murder hobos beware, or be welcome? Will your game have an emphasis on combat, or will combat be rare and be more of a role-playing game? Rules management may come up too. So do you run rules as written or rule of cool? It may not come up now, but it will soon after the game if it doesn't. What do you do about character advancement? Use the standard rules? Do you use milestone advancement? Do you give XP out individually or as a group? And how frequently? And then, of course, what about your own concerns? Min-maxing, rules lawyering. players that are isolationists, that are always leaving the party, players that split the party, characters that kill other characters or steal from other characters. It doesn't come up very much, but what are you going to do about in-game downtime? Do the characters get to practice? Do they have to be explicit and say they're practicing, or is it just assumed that it's happening? Another important one, and they may not mention it because they don't want to know, is wealth accumulation. Are there banks in your world, or do they have to carry everything with them? I can tell you from years and years of experience that if a character can carry all the wealth that they have, they'll carry a kingdom's worth of gold. Do you have your own house rules? Do you have action adjustments, skill or feat modifications? Do you change character creation? What about resurrection and reincarnation? A lot of DMs don't have it at all. Some treat it like it's any other kind of magic. In your game, are there only humans? Or do you even allow characters to play monsters as a PC? The things that matter most for your game is what you should discuss during your session 0. The players are going to have questions. You're going to have questions for the players. Just make sure that everything is focused on what's going to make a better campaign for everybody so that it's fun for all. So let's talk about consent and safety tools. We all know there's been a lot of media that crosses lines for us. A needle to the eye, rape, infanticide, racism, homophobia. It's just an endless list of obias. Anything that ends with an obia is a problem for somebody in the game. Unless you and the players collectively create a safety threshold, you may not know when you're crossing a line. I've heard the argument, what about books and movies? Every writer, every director, every artist, they chose the path they were going to go down, regardless of the risks and the discomforts that they brought upon themselves. And as a reader or a viewer of movies, there's already a lot of safety tools out there. There's reviews. Social media talks about movies all the time. On a book, there's liner notes and sleeves. But most important, though, is that reading a book or watching a movie is different from the role-playing experience. Because unlike those other media, in role-playing, you actually work your way through that. There's a level of abstraction in experiencing art versus being the artist. Furthermore, unlike a role-playing game, you deciding to put down a book or stop watching a movie has no effect on the other people reading a book or watching the movie. Of course, it's your game, and I'm not here to tell you that you have to use consent and safety tools. I'm also not going to tell you that you shouldn't delve into deep or complicated subjects in your role-playing game. But for the naysayers, I also say there's nothing wrong with talking about it beforehand so that you make sure that everybody is on board before you start bringing those topics to bear in the middle of the game. It's really an easy win-win for everybody. One company has taken on consent in gaming like it's a personal mission, Monty Cook Games. They recently created a tool called Consent in Gaming. It's complete with a PDF that's fillable or printable and a guide on how to handle these sensitive topics. It's quickly become an industry standard because it's professionally written, thorough, and system agnostic. Interestingly, it's been nominated for an Emmy for Best Free Game Product. By the time you view this, it might have already won that Emmy. I've included a link to it down below. There have also been some terrific tools created for in-game play, particularly on virtual tabletops like Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. Eugene Marshall of Arcanist Press created a terrific video for Sigil Entertainment where he explores these tools in a video called Safety Tools on Roll20. By the way, some of the tools work outside of Roll20 also, and there's a link to them down below. There are a lot of places I don't think safety tools are all that necessary. A one-shot from a commercially available product that people know? Probably not. A short adventure, 2 or 3 sessions, where you know you're not going to delve into anything complicated? Not there either. But what about a longer campaign that's going to delve into something complicated, dark? Definitely you should use them then. What about a new campaign, regardless of length, with players that you don't know and you've not played with? Probably a good idea then too. What about for people that you haven't run for or played with? Say on Roll20 or on Fantasy Grounds or another virtual tabletop? Absolutely. Every time I would use them. As a DM, player safety is your concern in the same way that actors' safety on a movie set is the director's concern. I believe you can get much more out of your session 0 if you split it into 2. In this video, we explored the first half of that, which is the DM's session 0. In the next video, we're going to explore the player's side. Do you always need a session 0? No, of course not. If you're winging something, no. For a one-shot, probably not. Anything longer, though, you should almost surely have a session 0. The open communication will benefit the players. It'll help you understand their motivations and how they're going to play. A session 0 should allow you to create something more enjoyable and engrossing for your players. Thank you for joining us on our DMing journey. We have 2 companion series. One is called World Building Bootcamp, where we help you with your storytelling and your world building, and one called Map Making Bootcamp, where we help you build better maps. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell to get notified of new content. Have a question? Leave a comment below and we'll answer every question we get. You can also find us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Discord, all at /ZealZaddy. You can also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/ZealZaddy and our live game streams at twitch.tv/ZealZaddy. I'm Scott Coventry, and I hope you enjoy deeper storytelling in your role-playing games.